In Revenge of the Sith, we saw Darth Vader born in fire. Broken on Mustafar, his body was burned, his lungs destroyed, and his master locked him inside a prison of black armor.
You lied to me. You told me you could save her.
Perhaps I could have, but you killed her, Vader. You murdered Padme.
I have done everything you wanted. You have failed me.
You have failed yourself.
That suit kept him alive, but it also kept him weak, slow, in pain, and bound to Palpatine's will. For 20 years, Vader was feared across the galaxy, yet chained by the very system that sustained him. But what if he changed that? What if he rebuilt himself into something faster, stronger, and beyond Palpatine's control? In this version of the story, that's exactly what happens. And nothing turns out the same. Let's begin. The fall of Anakin Skywalker left him in ruin. On Mustafar, his duel with Obi-Wan stripped him of his limbs, his body, and the very identity that made him a Jedi. When Palpatine found him burning on the black sand, he didn't save him out of compassion. He rebuilt him to be a prisoner. The black suit was not a gift but a curse. Heavy armor, constant needles digging into his flesh, and a respirator that never let him breathe freely. He was in agony every second, and Palpatine wanted it that way. Pain kept him angry, and anger kept him chained. For years, Vader endured this, partly because he believed he deserved punishment for Padme's death, and partly because he thought it was the only way to grow stronger in the dark side. But time wore him down. His movements were clunky, his reflexes were dulled. And while he was feared, he wasn't the unstoppable warrior he had once been as Anakin. Each mission reminded him of what he had lost. In battles against Jedi survivors, he found himself damaged again and again. The whispers of Anakin's ghost inside his mind told him the truth, that he was no longer master of his fate, only a tool. That thought festered until it became unbearable. During one of his campaigns, Vader nearly died fighting Jedi Master Oppo Rancisis and a host of Kalish warriors. Their electrostaffs tore through his armor, and even after slaughtering them with brutal strength, he collapsed, broken again by the limits of the suit. But in the ashes of that fight, he discovered something extraordinary. Deep within the Kalish caves was an armory filled with replacement parts once meant for General Grievous. Shelves of droid limbs, plating, and experimental cybernetics lay waiting, untouched since the Clone Wars. Staring at it, Vader realized the truth. Palpatine hadn't made him a weapon, he'd made him a slave. But with this technology, he could build something better. He could build something unstoppable. Back on Mustafar, Vader began a secret project. At first, he used the parts of Grievous to test improvements. He threatened doctors and scientists into serving him, forcing them to experiment on his body while he remained conscious, so they wouldn't dare betray him. In other versions of his story, he ventured to Exegol and allowed the Sith Eternal to rebuild him in armor of pure Beskar, with jetpacks, built-in blasters, and even flamethrowers hidden within his arms. No matter the path, the outcome was the same. Vader emerged from surgery reborn. The suit that had been his coffin became his liberation. This time, there were no exposed wires, no control box on his chest that could be targeted, and no weakness to force lightning. His senses were sharpened. His vision was clear. He could move as fluidly as he once did as Anakin, and with limbs made of cortosis or Beskar, he was immune to both sabers and storms of electricity. For the first time since Mustafar, Vader felt whole. He felt like himself again. But before he could face Palpatine, he needed to test what this new body could do. On the world of Hypori, he found his test. A slaughtered garrison of clones hinted at Jedi involvement, and as he investigated the ruins, the trap was sprung. From the shadows stepped Mace Windu, scarred but alive, carrying the same amethyst blade that once nearly ended Sidious. Alongside him were 3 Jedi younglings who had somehow survived the Purge: Gungi, Zat, and Numa, children Anakin remembered from the temple. For a moment, the weight of his crimes returned. But then, with a hiss of his saber, Vader silenced the memory of Anakin and faced them. The duel was vicious. The younglings fought bravely, but they were no match for the monster in Beskar. One by one, they fell. Gungi's roar was silenced. Numa's screams ended in a single stroke. And when it was done, only Windu remained. Their clash shook the corridors, a storm of fury built on years of hatred. Windu pressed him with Vapad, feeding off the darkness within Vader, but this time it wasn't enough. Vader's armor withstood every strike, his strength overwhelming the old master. And in the end, he crushed Windu beneath the weight of the dark side, driving his saber into his chest. Vader stood over the bodies and breathed, not with the labored rasp of the old respirator, but with steady calm. The test was complete. He had surpassed the chains Palpatine gave him, and now he was ready for the true battle, the one he had waited for since Mustafar. It was time to kill the Emperor. Vader's shuttle touched down on Coruscant in silence. The city that once belonged to the Republic now glowed with Imperial banners, every street buzzing with propaganda about the Emperor who had ended the war. But Vader wasn't here to serve that Emperor anymore. He strode through the Senate complex with a new purpose. His armor didn't creak or drag like before. Each step was sharp, steady, and confident. Guards bowed as he passed, unaware of the storm building inside him. At the top of the spire, Palpatine waited. The Emperor sat in his darkened office, eyes half closed, as if he had sensed Vader's approach hours ago. When the door opened and the black silhouette filled the frame, Sidious rose from his throne, lips curling into the faintest smile. But that smile vanished when he realized what he was looking at. This wasn't the Vader he had built. The armor was sleeker, the mask had been reforged, and the aura rolling off his apprentice was no longer one of pain, it was one of power. "What have you done?" Palpatine hissed. His voice trembled between anger and unease. He had designed the suit to be weak, to break under his lightning, to keep his apprentice chained. Now he saw that chain had been shattered. Vader stepped forward, his new respirator breathing calmly. "I have freed myself." His voice was deeper, steadier, and carried none of the strain Palpatine had come to expect. "No longer will I live as your prisoner. Today, I take what should have been mine all along." Sidious laughed, but the sound was hollow. He extended his fingers and unleashed a torrent of blue lightning that lit up the chamber. For years, that power had reduced Vader to writhing agony. But now the bolts crashed against Beskar plating and dissipated, leaving only scorch marks on the walls. Vader did not even flinch. He stood tall, arms at his sides, and let the storm wash over him. When the sparks faded, he took another step forward. For the first time in his long life, Palpatine felt fear. He ignited his crimson lightsaber, lunging forward in a blur of speed. His strikes were precise, vicious, fueled by decades of mastery. Sidious had trained in every form of combat, while Vader had focused only on his brutal Jijemso. Yet every blow that fell met a wall of armor. Vader blocked with his blade, with his gauntlets, even with the armored curve of his shoulder. Sparks flew, but no wound came. The Emperor's advantage in speed was clear, but each strike that glanced off Vader's shell only pushed him further into desperation. Vader answered with power. He swung with the force of a hammer, each blow shaking the chamber. His strikes weren't elegant, but they didn't need to be. The suit amplified his strength beyond what Sidious had expected, and with each clash the old Sith Lord's wrists buckled. Finally, with a roar that echoed across the office, Vader slammed his saber down so hard that Sidious was driven to one knee. The Emperor snarled and summoned lightning again, trying to blind his apprentice with pure fury. But once more, the storm failed. Vader walked through it, grabbed Sidious by the wrist and crushed it with his metal hand until bones snapped. The Emperor screamed, his saber falling to the floor. Vader caught it mid-air, turned it around, and drove it through his master's stomach. Palpatine gasped, eyes wide, electricity flickering helplessly around his lips as the red blade seared him from within. For decades he had manipulated, deceived, and controlled. But all his schemes ended here, at the hands of the very apprentice he thought he'd broken. As Palpatine crumpled to the ground, the room fell silent. Vader looked down at his fallen master, then turned and walked to the throne. The massive chair, once reserved for the ruler of the galaxy, now belonged to him. He sat, his cape settling around him, and breathed steadily. For the first time since Mustafar, His breaths were not labored or painful, they were calm. In this moment, Darth Vader had become what Anakin Skywalker had always dreamed of, the most powerful man in the galaxy. But power demanded proof. Word of Palpatine's death spread quickly through the Imperial Palace, and for a moment, panic rippled through the Senate. Could the Empire survive without its Emperor? The answer came in fire. Vader's first orders were swift and merciless. Planets suspected of harboring rebel sympathies were bombarded into ash. Governors who hesitated to swear loyalty found their families executed. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Darth Vader was Emperor now, and his rule would not be questioned. To secure his new throne, Vader needed allies. He summoned 2 men to his side, both already feared in the Empire. The first was Grand Moff Tarkin, the political strategist who had thrived under Palpatine's favor. Vader looked him in the eye and made his command simple: control the Senate, eliminate dissent, and keep the machine of government running. Tarkin, ambitious as always, bowed. He would be the face of the Empire's order, while Vader remained its fist. The second was Grand Admiral Thrawn, a commander of unmatched tactical genius. Vader tasked him with reshaping the Imperial Navy into a force unlike any the galaxy had seen. No more wasted resources on vanity projects like the Death Star. Instead, Thrawn built fleets of TIE defenders, squadrons of advanced troopers, and war machines designed for efficiency and terror. Under his guidance, the military became a weapon honed to perfection. Then there were the Inquisitors. Palpatine had created them as a leash, a way to hunt Jedi without giving Vader too much independence. Now Vader saw them for what they were: weak, broken remnants of an order that should have died. One by one, he summoned them to Fortress Inquisitorius. And one by one, he slaughtered them. The Grand Inquisitor alone was spared, not as an equal, but as a reminder of what happened to those who served poorly. The rest were reduced to ashes, their screams echoing in the halls as Vader cleansed the Empire of weakness. In these first months of his rule, the galaxy learned the truth. Palpatine had been cunning, manipulative, and patient. Vader was none of those things. He ruled by fear alone, his upgraded armor making him untouchable. Entire systems bent the knee not out of loyalty, but because they had seen what happened to those who resisted. And in the shadows of his throne room, Vader dreamed of something greater. He dreamed of ending the Jedi once and for all, of hunting Kenobi and Yoda until there was nothing left of the old Republic. With Palpatine gone, nothing could stop him. Or so he thought. Vader's new empire spread like wildfire, but his heart was still unsettled. The Jedi who had once been his family were not all gone. Somewhere in the sands of Tatooine, Obi-Wan Kenobi still breathed. And in the distant swamps of Dagobah, Yoda's presence whispered faintly in the Force. For Vader to be truly free, for his empire to stand unchallenged, those last embers had to be crushed. He began with Obi-Wan. Meditation inside his bacta tank sharpened his senses in a way his old body never could. Free of pain, Vader could stretch his mind across the galaxy, sifting through shadows of the Force until he found a flicker of something familiar. A small hut in the wastelands of Tatooine, an old hermit that the locals called Ben, the same Ben who had once left him broken on Mustafar. Vader's fury burned like never before. He landed on the desert world with a squadron of troopers, but he hardly needed them. The villagers he questioned offered up everything under the weight of his grip on their throats. Fear made them talk, and soon he stood outside the hut. Obi-Wan stepped out, weathered and tired, but his blue blade ignited all the same. He looked into Vader's mask and saw what Anakin had become: sleeker, stronger, armored in Beskar and carrying the presence of death itself. For a moment, Obi-Wan hesitated. This was no longer the duel he had once won. Their sabers clashed, blue against red, sparks showering into the sand. Obi-Wan fought bravely, his footwork still precise, but every strike against Vader's armor slid off harmlessly. The Dark Lord blocked with his gauntlets, his chestplate, even his armored boots. Then he revealed the horrors of his new body. Flames burst from his wrists, surrounding Obi-Wan in fire. The Jedi Master staggered back, only to be struck with a surge of mechanical lightning that poured from Vader's fingertips. It was the nightmare of Mustafar all over again, only now the roles were reversed. Obi-Wan crumpled to the ground, his body smoking as his old apprentice towered over him. There were no last words, no forgiveness. Vader ended him without hesitation. The man who had once been his brother was gone, and with him the last tie to Anakin Skywalker's life. But Vader's rage was not satisfied. From Obi-Wan's death, the Force whispered another name, Yoda. The little green master who had once bested Palpatine in the Senate chamber, who had trained generations of Jedi, still lived. Vader knew he had to be destroyed. Through interrogation of Bail Organa, Vader finally found the truth. The Eldoranian senator resisted, his spirit unbroken even under torture, but Vader's mind probe stripped the secret from him. Dagobah! That was where Yoda hid, and in those same memories, Vader uncovered something else. A revelation that froze him in place. Luke and Leia, his children, alive all along. Hatred consumed him. He snapped to Bail's neck and left his corpse on the floor of the detention cell. There would be time for the children later. First, Yoda had to die. Dagobah's swamps were heavy with the dark side. But Vader felt Yoda the moment he stepped off his ship. The old master limped from his hut, saber igniting with its familiar green glow. "Anakin!" he said softly, calling him by the name he had long since abandoned. Vader's reply was a storm. He hurled trees with the Force, sent lightning screaming through the air, and set the swamp ablaze with fire. Yoda danced between the attacks with his old agility, but he was tired. Centuries weighed on him, and Vader's new strength was overwhelming. Their sabers clashed only briefly before Vader's hand closed around Yoda's throat. He lifted the Grand Master into the air, squeezing with both mechanical power and the Force itself. Yoda's tiny hands clawed at the grip, his eyes staring into the mask of the apprentice he had once failed to guide. Then came the crack. The sound of Yoda's neck snapping echoed across the swamp, and his body fell limp. With that, the Jedi Order was truly gone. Vader returned to Alderaan for his next prize. Leia Organa resisted with the fire of her mother, but resistance meant nothing. Her adoptive family was slaughtered, their palace burned. Vader took her by the arm and dragged her onto his ship. She was his daughter, and he would twist her into the apprentice he wanted Palpatine to forbid him from ever having. On Tatooine, he completed the circle. Owen and Beru tried to hide Luke, but Vader's fury reduced their homestead to ashes. Luke was taken, just as his sister had been. Side by side, Vader led them into his fortress, telling himself it was out of love. Love poisoned by darkness. Love reshaped into control. If they were to survive in his galaxy, they would learn the ways of the Sith. From that day forward, the galaxy belonged to him. The Senate bent under Tarkin's iron hand. The fleets crushed every rebel cell under Thrawn's command. The Jedi were extinct, Yoda and Obi-Wan dead, and the Skywalker children raised in darkness. No Death Star was needed, because fear itself was the weapon. Worlds obeyed, not because they were deceived by politics, but because they knew resistance would mean annihilation. In the Emperor's palace, Vader sat on the throne, his children at his side, Palpatine's body long since discarded. His suit gleamed black, the scar shining in the light of Coruscant's skyline. The hiss of his respirator was steady, no longer the labored sound of suffering, but the calm breath of a man who had remade himself into the galaxy's unchallenged ruler. He had finally become what he always wanted, the strongest being alive, free of pain, free of masters, and free of mercy. What if Darth Vader upgraded his suit? Maybe the Jedi wouldn't return with glory or titles. Maybe peace wouldn't come through thrones or grand victories. Maybe it would come under fear, in fire, in conquest. Because strength isn't the end, it's the beginning of something darker. And Darth Vader? He wasn't just a fallen Jedi. He was the Emperor the galaxy had to accept, whether it was ready or not. If you enjoyed this alternative timeline, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Star Wars stories, and may the Force be with you.